What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another fantastic Tuesday here on the Exploding Dice channel. Thank you guys for coming on. My name is Askren. I'm going to be your host here. Welcome to Fuzzy Dice, as you can see over here. This, turn the theme music down just a little bit. Not completely off, though. Welcome. This is Fuzzy Dice, your Dungeon Master show here on the Exploding Dice channel. As always, my name is Askren. I'm your host and Dungeon Master here. And with me is my special guest on this side, and I always forget which side my camera's on. On this side, yeah, could be anywhere. I got my special guest, Splattercat Games. How is it going, my friend? Hold on, wait. Oh, it's muted. I think I'm having a Skype issue. Hold on. Try it now. There we go. Except I don't. Hold on. Can I add an audio? I don't know if I'm picking you up on audio now. Give me a second. Let's switch this to Speakers Yeti, maybe? No? Guys, we're having technical difficulties. I'm just gonna... You know what? I'm just gonna put it on the cable driver, which should do it. We can hear you now. I don't know if we can hear the music now, which... We'll have to live.
Yeah.
But we should be able to hear you. What's up?
I'll be as musical as possible if you want me to. I can just... da, 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 crash. Like, I can do the sound effects in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Nope, that's the wrong quote. I meant quote 3. Yes. So let me know, guys, if you can hear everything. I'm gonna keep playing the music anyway. But I don't know if you can hear it, so just let me know. By the way, thank you so much to Avak for the host before. Also to Friendly Fire TV and Two Dwarfs TV for the host. You guys are awesome. And thank you, Splattercat Gaming, for the host. And welcome to Damed Dingo. Thank you for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Thank you for joining Dice Thulu's Embrace. Yeah, Skagath's telling me no music, but great voices. Alright, well then I'm just going to turn off the music because, you know, we can't
Take it away.
Yes. Now
it's
that
music
we're...
for plebs anyways. We don't need it.
Yeah, no,
okay.
we don't need no music. So let's pretend we didn't have any technical difficulties, and let's just jump right in. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? Tell us who you are and how you got here.
Yeah. I am Splattercat Gaming. I'm actually a YouTuber. I spend all my time on the YouTubes doing indie gaming stuff, but about a year ago, all of my streaming friends and YouTube friends and I started a show called Roll For It, where we play Shadowrun, we play Dark Heresy, we play D&D. We rotate games every now and again just to keep it nice and fresh and everything like that. And it's been really, really fantastic. We've had a lot of good times. I mean, it's frankly one of my favorite parts of the week. And so anyways, I arrived here via Twitter. That's how I got here. The Twitter stream. It just said, hey, Splattercat, you must be here at this time. And I said, yes, almighty Twitter. And here I am.
That's, yeah, I don't know, people don't know this. People ask me all the time how I connect with my guests. It's sort of like the Matrix. You kind of just hack into the stream and then it just delivers you people, like a stream of people.
It's all voodoo magic on the internet. There's just like 80s music in the background. You're like, we're hacked in. And you never actually say what you're doing. You just click clack on a keyboard a lot.
Did you ever see the movie Johnny Mnemonic?
No, actually, I haven't seen that one. That's with Keanu, though, right?
Yes.
That's with Keanu Reeves, yeah.
There's this amazing scene where he has to hack into something, and bear in mind, this movie was made in the 90s, so fucking no idea what computers in the future would look like, and he has to, like, solve this he puts on, like, a 3D, like, virtual reality visor, and he has to, like, and these gloves, and he has to, like, solve a Rubik's Cube type puzzle, and it's like...
Why is this user interface so difficult? Why is this the way that it is?
It's my favorite part of that whole movie. Because
so he kind of had like a Minority Report thing going on where he's got to be like sliding stuff around.
Oh yeah, no, you go look it up on YouTube. There's a whole fucking like, it's like you have to put your hands over this specific like hollow thing and solve like this Rubik's Cube puzzle. It's so ridiculous and I love it. And that's, in my mind, that is how computers will look in the future.
Forever. Absolutely, I hope so. They've got to do something right now. Too boring at the moment. They got to make them more complicated. You can only click the mouse by getting all the right colors on one side. That's when you earn yourself one double click.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot more
man.
complicated getting to Reddit. It's going to be very, very difficult.
Oh man.
But you'll appreciate it more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you post your stupid tweet that no one's gonna ever care about, then you can be like, yeah, but I'm a fucking genius for being able to do it. All right.
That's right. I bet it would cut. I would cut down tremendously just on internet shit posting. Like I bet it would cut down. It's just too complicated for the dumb people. They'd just be like, I want to get on here and make a stupid comment, but I can't. I can't solve the goddamn puzzle. Like, it's over for those people. The ride is over.
That's in my mind. We were talking about Shadowrun before. In my mind, that's kind of how being a decker works. So you plug your brain into a computer, and like in your head, you're just doing like a Mario level or something to do the hacking, because that's more interesting.
I always find it like the complicated thing about like Shadowrun with regards to like the Matrix is like technically it can be whatever you want it to be. So everybody's host is like different. Like some places you might just be like disembodied motes of light, and then other places you might be like an ancient feudal Japan, and everybody's wearing like samurai armor for no reason. And it's just like you force everyone inside your world to. It's like playing
that's like
Second Life basically.
It's
like Second Life. You go to somebody else's area and it's just like, well, you have to adhere to my rules now. Like.
Yeah, it was. They did that in a movie. There was a horror movie, I think, about that, where the woman went inside this serial killer's brain. It was like this artsy fucking Art Nouveau type thing, and you're like, okay, I guess we're solving problems here.
Was that The Cell? I think
Yes,
that's what
it was.
Yeah.
That's the one. Thank you for the host, Kobold Khan, by the way. Thank you so much. So for those of you who are new to the channel, and if you are hanging out with us, please hit that retweet link. Tell all your friends that you're hanging out with us, and share the madness with everyone. If this is your first time here, the way we tend to do things is we like to, we just kind of talk about Dungeon Master stuff. We're going to talk about gaming, philosophy, what we like, what we don't like, where we kind of come from, and what we think about things. And obviously, we absolutely have time for your guys' questions and topics. So if you have anything that you want us to discuss, just, keep those with you, and then at about the halfway mark in the show, Dice Thulu will start letting you know that you can just throw those at us. You could please be vocal and upfront and forthcoming with your thoughts about the stuff we're discussing, because I'll be reading from chat, and both of us are hanging out in chat, and we'll definitely we definitely want to see what you guys have to say, and we don't want don't just leave your comments till the second half, but let us know what you think and how what's up.
Yeah, I just proved it. I just proved to chat that I prove it because they don't believe me.
Oh.
They're like, he says he's there, but we never hear from him. And I'm like, yeah, that's because I got like I've got like a deity thing going on. I don't know. I hear it coming in, but some days I'm just like, So I'm gonna give him a little sign right now, a little prophecy.
By the way, someone mentioned to me that this video coming through on Skype is really low res and kind of crackly. My internet's been having issues recently. It doesn't seem to affect the streaming that much, but it might affect Skype video every now and then. Just bear with me. I'm working on it, but that's not an easy fix. So
I'm glad you said something because I thought it was me. I was over here clicking off Steam and being like, no, stop updating things in the middle of the show. Go away. No, I don't want Java. Go away. I was like clicking down things thinking it was my fault. I was like, I've ruined it. I've destroyed the entire show.
No, it comes and goes. It's my internet's just been shit recently. Speaking of shit, I was trying to play video games yesterday with friends, and I fucking I don't know. I gotta call my ISP because we couldn't even play like a co-op game of Borderlands together. It was just brutal. It was the shittiest. So you have a obviously you're kind of pretty big doing the thing on YouTube, but you definitely you do a lot of role-playing game stuff. What do you where do you kind of come from as a gamer? Like what's your kind of background and your general experience?
I think my background is essentially the same as like any kid from the 80s. Like I'm an 80s kid, so I grew up with a Nintendo Entertainment System, Final Fantasy, stuff like that. And I played through Nintendo, Sega Genesis, all the different generations. And my dad ended up getting a computer at one point that was capable of playing video games. And so I was at a place called CompUSA one time, and I'm going through there, and I see this game called Baldur's Gate. And I start going through like the front panel of like the box because things came in boxes back then. Nowadays, our great High Lord Gaben just gifts it to you through the power of the internet and is like, here, you have a game now. It's in the Immaterium. It's digital. But back in those days, we bought boxes that were like this big for our games and came with like giant manuals and all kinds of shit. And so I got Baldur's Gate and I went home and I played that game probably like 1,000 hours over the course of the next few months. I disappeared from the grid entirely as a kid, and that was my first introduction really to like AD&D. And the cool thing about Baldur's Gate is that if you look at the original packaging and the original manuals and everything, it basically taught you how to play AD&D. If you read the manual for the game, you knew how to play AD&D by the end. It was basically like a simplified rule set. And so that was my first introduction. I was like, man, people actually play this with dice and stuff like that? I got to check this out. And it was a long time before I actually got to be in an actual tabletop group because there were no clubs or anything at my high school or anything like that. My first tabletop group was probably when I was about 16 or 17. Some friends of mine, we had a group of 7 people, 1 GM and 6 party members. And we ended up every Friday night for a couple of months. We would gather up and we would play from 5 in the evening till about 2 or 3 in the morning. You know, we would have drinks and meals and we would order pizzas and do all that kind of fun stuff. And honestly, that's some of my best memories in life. Like the 30 years that I've been alive, that still remains like some of the best months of my life. And so ever since then, I've just been a massive addict. I mean, personally, I'm a big board game fan too. Mm-hmm. I love everything that Fantasy Flight makes. I play all kinds of random tabletop games where if you don't have time to play D&D, but you want to play something that's not on a screen, I love stuff like Prophecy, stuff like Runebound, Arkham Horror.
Oh, yeah,
I love board games. Like, I'll play board games to death. Even going down to, like, stuff that's not even an RPG. Like, I'll play Settlers of Catan all day. I'll play all kinds of random games until my eyeballs bleed.
Yeah, I was talking about this. My introduction to RPGs is similar, very similar background because when I was a kid, you know, I had a Sega Genesis and a Nintendo, and we played. I had a Sega Genesis. My sister had a Nintendo, but we took it from her. And
important question. Which did you like better? Because this is gonna set the tone of our friendship forever.
Hold on a second, because I played Sega Genesis. That was probably the system I played the most on when I was a kid, outside the Game Boy. And a lot of the things that I seem to remember being on the Sega Genesis weren't, because one of the games I remember most not fondly, but most vividly is Turtles in Time, which was not on the Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
It was on Nintendo, but I remember playing hours and hours of that, and you know, so I don't know. It's hard to say that the whole. I liked. I guess I probably liked the Nintendo more because it probably had better games. But I played so much Sonic on the fucking Sega Genesis.
Yeah. I was an RPG addict. I mean, I really when I got my Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, I never had one. My best friend had a Super Nintendo, so if I wanted to play Super Nintendo, I had to go to his house, and he had like all the good stuff. He had like Breath of Fire, he had Final Fantasy VI, he had like all the good stuff.
I didn't have any of those. It was when I was about 9 that my dad gave me a copy of Ultima.
Ooh,
and that was what got me. That was what got. It was Ultima 3 that got me into RPGs.
That's one of my all-time things that I really, really, really want to do with Roll For It, is I want to have Richard Garriott on the show.
He was on this show.
Yeah? How did it go? What did you talk about with Richard Garriott? Did you fanboy out? Because I would just wet myself.
No, Richard is the coolest guy in the world, and if anyone's interested, you guys can check out the video. It's actually on the YouTube channel. He is. That was our front page, Twitch front page day, and it was probably one of the coolest experiences. I mean, he's just
very cool.
Everything he does is so cool. Like the day after, a few days after he was on the show, he tweets, he's like, "I'm at Stephen Hawking's house right now," and I'm like, "What? Why is this guy so cool?"
He's the king of the nerds, man. We have to have an election. And I'm pretty sure it's not like Michio Kaku or any of the TV guys. I'm really sure if we get down to it, Richard Garriott would win.
Oh, dude.
I mean, with Richard Garriott, the big thing for me with that is, like, some of the earliest RPGs I ever played were Ultima, Akalabeth. Mm-hmm. I had a box, and the box had Akalabeth, and it had, like, Ultima, like, 1 through 5. And that was like an entire summer for me as a kid. It was all gone. Just me working my way through all the Ultimas with Iolo, Chaminade, and Dupree, and just having a good ass time. And it was cool because, like, when you're a kid, you had never seen anything like it before. Because as an 80s kid, for me, video games were like platformers. You
That's
jumped on
exactly it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the characters did not have a friendship. The characters didn't have conversations. And then all of a sudden you're playing like this game where the characters seem to have like this background. They all know each other. They're telling like stories about stuff that happened back in the olden days with each other. And you see that camaraderie there, and it like expands your mind for what video games could do back then. And every time after that point, you're like, well, shit, I want to play RPGs now.
For me, it was very similar, but it wasn't so much the characters as it was the fact that like when I played Ultima 3, it's like you were in this world, and it's like there were no so if you grow up on platformers and stuff and fighting games and stuff, like I'm sure me and you both did when we were kids,
Yeah.
that's your kind of impression of what a game can be, and then you're dropped into a world, like not a side-scrolling type thing where you can go where the game lets you. It's like, no, you can walk wherever the hell you want. If you want to kill someone, you can go do it. Like, if you want to take some stuff, if you want to, if you want to be good, and it's like, I was like, oh, that's, there's things here that I didn't know that you could do, like. And then, it was all over for me. I played all the games through, and,
I seem to remember that being a big thing for me when I played Ultima 5 or 6.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that, like, when I played, you were going through the world, and I remember being, like, 11 or 12 years old, and realizing I could take spoons and, like, cheeses and shit off the table, and just being like, I can do that? What the fuck? All the cheese is mine! Give me it! I want all the cheese. And it was like you had no idea you could even do that in a game, because all the games I had played before then didn't even have items. You picked up like the fire flower, or you picked up like the raccoon tail, but that was as far as it went. There was no like mundane shit like a random step ladder that you could move around inside of a kitchen somewhere.
Oh yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you guys, if you're into Dungeons and Dragons, you should definitely check out Richard's thoughts on like story building and world building and stuff. It's such an amazing perspective, especially after kind of having done it for so long. But I don't want to talk about too much about that, because I'm sure we could talk about an idol of both of ours forever. But so it seems like, obviously it seems interesting because we both come from very similar places as gamers. Speaking of, I just want to speak a little bit about board games. Because there's one that I've been so interested in, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting a chance to try it on the show at some point. Is Kingdom Death?
Mm-hmm.
Have you been keeping up with that?
I haven't. There was a time where every single day I would log on to Board Game Geek, and I would just like check all the things coming out and be like, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. But I've just been so busy lately that I'm out of the loop nowadays. I'm out of the loop with what's going on.
It's Kingdom Death. I don't want to explain the whole thing right now, but it's so like it's half role playing game, half board game with like plastic models and stuff. Like you have like your little character, but the models are not designed to stay static. Like, you just build your character and you use it. Like, it's designed because you kill things and you make their bodies into like armor and weapons and stuff, and so you like swap those out on your little plastic things. But it's not all. That's not all, because like it's so fucked up. Everything in the if you're into like weird art and like messed up designs that are just come out of some like demented dude's head, like this game is absolutely that, and I love everything about it. I'm trying to organize a chance to play it on like Tabletop Simulator, because the actual box is like $400. But I'm definitely so M Matten says I have Kingdom Death. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to play it yet. Well, you know what you should do then? You should send it to me, and I will also not get to play it, but I will then have it.
Isn't that always the big problem with board games, though?
Yeah.
Like, I would these board games, and I'll drop like $120 or whatever on like the new Fantasy Flight thing, and I'll be like, aha! And I like hold it up in the air like Link, and I'm like, I have it! And then you ask people if they want to play.
Then you look around and you got no one to play with.
You want me to play a fucking board game? What is it, like 1965? I'm like, no, but this is an awesome board game. It's like a video game, but on a board. That's how people used to do it in the old days. And they're like, that sounds fucking stupid. Now, can we just play D&D or something? I'm like, ah. I'm sorry, expensive game that I just purchased. I guess I'll just put you on my shelf.
Yeah. That's why
stay true.
That's why I wanted to make sure I found someone who knew the game and was willing to run it on Tabletop Simulator, because like I definitely it's something I want to show off because I'm so into it, and obviously it kind of negates that sort of that cost investment.
Yeah. Have you ever played Tales of Arabian Nights?
I haven't. I've heard of it. My board game knowledge is not tremendous because I grew up without a lot of role playing friends, and so I never.
Yeah.
I was never a huge board game guy.
That was always my big issue too when I was growing up, is because I was involved in a lot of sports. Like I played hockey, I was on the swim team, I played baseball, and like all my friends were very like stereotypical like jock type guys, you know. And this is back before like nerd stuff became cool. Like nowadays, it's geeky stuff is very in vogue right now. Like it's okay to be into like niche stuff nowadays, and nobody judges you for it. But all my friends were like hardcore like meathead jocks or whatever, and so it's just like I was always into these things, but you always had to kind of like keep it to yourself because you knew you were gonna get ripped for it. You'd be like, oh, I love D&D, but if I bring that up with everybody, they will have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. They'd be like, wait, so you're a ranger? And I'd be like, well, yeah, when you put it like that, like, so you wear like a cloak or like what? No, it's a game. You play it, but you're trying to explain like pretend playing, because really D&D is just playing pretend. And it's a really hard thing to explain to somebody that's left like playing pretend behind in their life.
You know what? You know what's funny to me though? Explaining playing games like D&D is kind of easy, I think, because the concept of D&D is in the cultural lexicon. But try and go to like a coworker or something when they ask like what you do outside of work, and explain that try and explain that you stream role playing games like on Twitch.
Happened to me. Happened to me at my wedding. My aunt was there. And she goes, so what are you doing for a living now? Which is always the question that I really loathe answering as like an internet person. Because I'm like, well, because nobody treats this job like it's serious. That's the big part. You explain what you do, and people always follow with, that's a job? Every fucking time. Every time. And so I was like, well, I play D&D on the internet for a living. And I also kind of do PR for video games. I wanted to soften it, I wanted to make it sound like... I wanted to put it in terms that they could understand. And so she was fine with the video game PR part. Like, she understood that reference. But when I got to the, like, I play D&D on the internet for a living and people watch me play, and then I get paid to do that, both her and my uncle were like, you can get a paycheck for that? Because they're old school. Like, my uncle's like a cop, She's like a nurse. Very, very, like, standard, traditional jobs. And I'm like, yeah, that's a big thing on the internet right now. You just like do a thing and people watch you do it, and then you get a paycheck. I don't know. I didn't invent it.
Yeah. No, it's weird, especially, because everyone's like, so are you you went to college, right? You know what? My family all sounds like that because they're all Jews from Queens. So they say, you went to college, right? What are you doing? It's like, I play video games on the internet. By the way, Bird vs. Plane, what's going on, Bird vs. Plane? Awesome friend of the stream, says he's going through his own board game obsession right now and growing his collection. Well, yeah, I mean, looks like you two will have a lot to talk about. You should let us know what you've bought recently. So you right now, I know you have 2 campaigns that you stream, right?
Yeah, so I'm DMing D&D on Wednesdays, and then we have Dark Heresy on Sundays. And Dark Heresy is coming to a close right now. We're getting to, how when you get to that point in the campaign where it feels like things are rolling downhill and they're picking up speed, and you can tell it's coming to that final clash, and you don't know who's gonna make it and who's like not gonna make it. We're at that point right now where basically both sides are staring at each other like gunslingers across the hallway, just waiting for it all to kick off. And so that's pretty exciting. D&D right now is actually just starting up. It's a strange thing to say, because with D&D campaigns, there really is a roll up to the whole thing. Yeah. Like, we've got, I think, 25 hours into our D&D campaign right now, and it's just starting to, like, move into, like, the main parts of the story, and it's just starting to get to, like, the really, really good, intriguing bits. Players are starting to get a feel for their characters, and, the role play is starting to come around really, really well. And it's always strange how it takes time with stuff like that, but it's so much fun once you get into, like, the thick of it.
See, the thing about it is, like, I don't think I've ever had a campaign get to the finish, just because I have a habit as a DM, and anyone who watches my show will know this. I have a habit of making things last way too long, and padding things out with way too much content, just because I like letting my stories sort of take as much time as they need. So we were talking before about my Friday game. We just played session number 67. Of that, and I think we're coming up on session 22 of the streamed game, and it's like, I mean, both of those are, the 67 sessions, like, they're solidly into like, getting up to level 8. So they're about half-ish way through the campaign, give or take.
Yeah, yeah. I never expect players. I always feel like if a player gets to level 20, I feel like I have failed as a DM. Like there should be some deaths or like some character swap arounds or something. Like if they make it to level 20 as like an entire unit, I'm just like, huh. Maybe I should have killed a fucking couple of them with a poison trap at some point. Just shiv a bitch in the dark.
Well, the thing about it is, and I pull a lot of my punches for the first probably 5 to 6 levels, only because I don't want a character dying that early in a campaign, because I think that takes a lot of the wind out of the sails of, of players and of the story as a whole, when you're like, when a character dies at sort of a really low level, because like you don't have access to resurrection abilities or anything like that, and you just, you can tell like they're gonna have to make something that's not their first choice of character. But my players are getting my 8th level players now. They're like, and they are a pretty solid team. Like some of them are pretty optimized. So I told them straight up, like, I'm not gonna pull my punches anymore. Like you guys at this point you are on your own. Like I have nothing. I have no help to give you. Because
real.
Yeah, because I want to, I want to see what happens when, like, it's when you have a party that's really, really optimized, you kind of sometimes lose out on, if you're not trying really hard to kind of give them really good fights, you lose out on a lot of the moments of tension, and if they kind of breeze from fight to fight, and I don't want them to go through the next 10 levels feeling invincible. Like I need to make sure they kind of feel challenged. So.
I do think the lethality of D&D, that's the nice thing that I've seen so far, is that if you optimize really, really hard at level 1, level 2, level 3, you tend to waltz through the earlier stuff, because shit like goblins and gnolls and stuff like that, they tend to have very low armor classes. They might have the HP to soak a couple of hits, but it's very, very possible in 5th edition to start a character with an AC of like 17 at level 1 if you play with your feats and everything right, and you get things where you wanted to be. And most characters at that level are not going to be able to fight back in any real way against somebody with a 17 AC at level 1. Like, it's just like, what are they going to do?
That's actually one of the interesting things about, because I play the game on Fridays, the long, like, 8th level game right now. That's a Pathfinder campaign. And we play Pathfinder, and then on stream we play D&D 5th edition. And the thing that I've found out is that, or a thing I've realized is, D&D 5th edition tends to start with characters being very hard to kill, and then as it goes on later, characters get a lot more squishy, a lot compared to the enemies.
Thing with the CRs, I feel like there's a ramp up almost. Like when they get to like 5, 6, the things get a lot more lethal. I mean, even if you look at simple monsters like giant spiders, if you take like a giant wolf spider, for example, it's got a CR of like 1.
Yeah.
But when it lands a hit, it can potentially, on an average hit, do like 14 damage.
Yeah.
Which to like a level 2 or 3 character is just like get out of my way. That's a really, really big hit for a low level character.
Well, especially because also the more powerful monsters in D&D are very much built to withstand a team of players. Like, you've got legendary actions, you've got lair actions, you've got, reaction type things, resistances, you've got, all this kind of stuff that makes it so that if you're fighting out of the book, at a higher level, it's probably easier for a character to die than it is at a lower level. Whereas a game like Pathfinder, it starts out incredibly easy to lose a character at low level, because most characters they have a 1-hit die, and it's like, a solid hit from like a goblin or something like that, like a crit might throw one of them into into the negatives. And as it goes, as levels go on, the players start outscaling the challenge rating of a lot of monsters in a lot of ways. And so, both with the magic items and like I have the dwarf and the swashbuckler in my party, both two different things. One of them is a all armor, and the other is all dexterity. And I think both of them have at least a 25 AC, if not more. So both of them incredibly hard to hit.
Yeah, that's where, like, honestly, my design at that point, if I have characters that are that good, because it's a tough spot to be in as a GM, because if somebody has specialized their character in a certain way, you don't want to fuck them over by negating it via the challenges you put in front of them.
Mhm.
But at the same time, in order to maintain tension, you kind of have to build the fight around the way that they've built it. And so there's a very, very thin line between, for example, with your guys, stacking the entire enemy team with stuff like Magic Missile and things that are AoEs that you don't really get any type of save or anything against.
Yeah.
Versus making them feel like their character's been marginalized and you're like picking on them, because like, oh, well, I built my character this way, but weirdly enough, every single person you put me up against has this one thing that counters me.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you build a character that's specifically spec'd out to be really great at tripping things, and the DM is like, oh, all of a sudden every enemy has wings.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, like, I have a barbarian in that party, and he hits like a fucking tank when he connects. Like he made a crit once with a power, like a bull rush power attack that did basically one shot a boss that had like 120 health. Like, he just one swing, it was done. But he's completely invalidated when he has to make a will save, which is why they were actually in a flooded library, and it was just filled with some fake creatures. This was our last session, and there was a Nixie in there. Now, a Nixie is like a CR3, so this is a thing that if anyone got a solid hit on, they would paste this thing, but it was across the room, and it has an ability where it sings like a siren song, and if they fail a will save, they're sort of compelled, and the only thing they can do is just sort of walk towards this creature, and then once they get there, it can make attacks on them. As long as it keeps singing, it can make attacks, and they can't do anything back. And so they walked up to it because he had failed his will save, and she was just singing, like, right in his face, like with a knife, just like sawing his throat, like making a coup de grace attack. And so she got like 3 seconds away from just like cutting his neck open, and and that was real. Like, that was not something I planned to happen in the fight. It was just sort of the way it worked. But I like moments like that where it kind of reinforces the fact that, like, just because you're a powerhouse, there's still shit that can happen,
Yeah.
And obviously I'm not going to make every single enemy have, like, will save or be charmed, but, it's... Sometimes it comes up, and sometimes other people's weaknesses come up. I don't tend to stack fights specifically to counter players, because to me that just feels a little bit... Like, it feels hard to justify sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of there can be a little bit of DM's frustration too, where you spend a lot of time kind of making, like you said, like, for example, your player like one shot at a boss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes when that happens, you're just like, because players can come out of left field and do shit that you just never expected, and it's like, well, that's how the game plays, I guess. You just one-shotted this dude that was really important to the storyline.
The thing about that in particular was, obviously, I would never put players in a fight against someone I considered important to the storyline, and I guess that's a rule I tell DMs all the time, is never, like, if in your head an NPC can't, like, if the story can't take an NPC dying, then don't put that NPC in combat. Because if you put them in combat and you expect them to make it out of that combat alive, they're not going to, I think every DM at some point builds an enemy where they're like, alright, so this guy's gonna fight, he's gonna show off a little bit, and then he's gonna have an escape plan. Don't, because they never make the escape plan. The players will find a way to fuck up the escape, and then you're sitting there kind of like, with like, I can't get this guy out of combat. He's gonna die. What's gonna go? But that particular NPC was just, it was a fight. That was just, it was supposed to be a challenging fight. But in that particular moment, I don't necessarily mind him one-shotting that boss because he worked for it. Like, he had to climb up on top of a statue. He had to make, like, a leaping power attack, which is it's a risky move. He had to take some time to kind of set this thing up, and then he rolled a crit. That's just how it goes. And I don't mind letting the player feel badass in that particular moment, because they're supposed to win the fight anyway.
Yeah, you have to. I think that's the big thing, is that you don't want to be an adversary. Like, as a GM, that's the number one, like, piece of advice that I would give people, is don't think of D&D as you versus the players. As much as it's tempting to do it sometimes when they're, like, defying you, or they're just like, you know how players could be sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very easy to slide into that adversarial role and be like, yo, I'm gonna get you next time. You better watch out. It's very, very easy to do that. But, like, your job is just to write the storyline and set the stage. Like, that's your job, and to arbitrate rules and just let them have fun with it. It'll be okay. It'll be all right as long as they're having fun. You've done the job right.
Yeah, someone tweeted me, and I tweeted this at work. I think it was a joke tweet, but I can't read the context because there was no winky face. But someone said, "Is a DM normally supposed to be a walking conflict of interest?" And I said, of course, because our job is sort of we have to try and kill the PCs and everything they love, but we also have to cheer for them to win and be happy. So it's like, yes, it is a conflict, but it's one, we manage it, at the same time. And that's
it's a tough job. It's very, very difficult to challenge people and at the same time root for them. Because on some level, if you spent like hours and hours and hours designing a storyline, you want it to play out like a certain way. Like, you recognize that there will be some wiggle room. The players will go off the rails at one point or another, and they'll probably attack it from a direction you didn't expect. But you try to build the campaign insulated enough to where the events still happen, regardless of the way that they interact. The main storyline stays intact and is not, like, severed halfway through.
You can you can definitely do that, and I think that tends to be my way of writing things. But then a lot of DMs have are just as happy to sort of make the story, make their plot like about whatever it is that the players try and do. Like if they decide to focus on a thing, then that thing is the thing that the story, the campaign's going to be about. I don't tend to do that only because I have a rule, and I tell this to to new DMs all the time. My rule is prepare as much as you need to feel confident. And I tend to not feel very confident in my ability to improv an entire plot from, minor events and kind of background stories that the players provide. So I tend to write an overarching plot, but obviously I will kind of change it as needed depending on how and where and why the players do what they choose to do. Obviously, which means obviously you can't try and influence them. Like I'm using NPCs and stuff all the time to try and influence players' decisions and in choices and opinions, but ultimately, like I don't want to take anything away from them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I find that the best way to do that for me personally is to make the world play out without the players. Like there's a setting, there's a location. There are storylines and intrigue happening between characters that are independent of the players. That way, if they choose to get involved, cool. They're now on somebody's side. They're moving things forward in this thing that's bigger than they are. If they choose not to get involved, there's consequences to that too, but the story still plays out without them. They might see, an important person get knifed in the street while they're going about doing some random thing that has nothing to do with anything that I wrote. Like, the world is still happening behind them.
Yeah, I tend to, so I know a lot of DMs when they hear that advice, what they actually do is, like, they have to sort of sit down and, like, use notes and charts and write out what is going to, like, what actually is happening in the world while their players are doing certain things. I tend to not do that. I tend to just, like, I call it sort of the illusion of a living world, in the sense that, like, they'll, when they're done with a quest, I might say, like, oh, and while you were doing this happened over here. But, the only thing I wrote is what happened over there, not, like, all the events that led up to it and stemmed from it, because, it's not good that, like, it doesn't matter that much to me or to them.
Yeah. I like planting with little things like that. I like planting seeds that actually do matter. Yeah. But they seem so mundane. Like, it's like overhearing a conversation. You don't think anything of it. But I love it when, like, 4 sessions later, they're privy to something that puts that conversation in context, and they're just like, ah!
Yeah,
and I realized, like, that was they should have mentally, like, acted on that. But it just seems so mundane that they were just like, oh, it's background chatter. It doesn't matter.
yeah. I really, I love doing sort of scene setting like that, and kind of being really, really subtle with information drops and like setting the scene for things to come. Though I think I tend to be too elaborate with it. I have a story, and I don't want to retell the whole thing, but I have a story about my players. Basically, they were working for the city guard, and the city guard just sent them to basically get close to this crime boss, so they could eventually take him down. And so they did. They basically volunteered to go work for them, and he sent them on 4 jobs. He gave them 4 jobs to do, and they did all of those jobs. And to the players at the time, the jobs just seemed like jobs. They just seemed like things that this guy wanted them to do. Like, they were obviously illegal, and they obviously kind of had their own moral area, but they were just things. And it wasn't until like much later on, after they killed him, that they realized that the things that they had done were actually like helping position the chess pieces so someone farther up the ladder can be in a position to fuck over the city with, you know, using the work that they did. And like, it took a while for that to come to light. Like, that was 15 sessions of like questing and scene setting, but you know, when it does come, I love the moments when those things do come to light, because, you know, that's just, I tend to think in really long, convoluted plot circles like that.
No, I agree. Stuff like that, you Shadowrun them. That's really, anybody who's like ever played Shadowrun before knows that like everything you're doing is affecting some way the world. It's affecting something, but you're a hired goon basically.
Yeah.
So you're not really allowed to know what the meaning of it all is, but eventually you will hack the wrong computer, or you will open the wrong file, or somebody will slip up and say something when you get a really good charisma check, and you'll be like, oh no, I've been a patsy the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I figured I was probably a patsy the whole time, but now I know I was a patsy the whole time.
Yeah, it's a matter of like, of later on in the story, when all of that information that you have just kind of is given context by you like meeting someone or hearing the right detail, and you're like, you know, oh, someone killed the guards, and, you know, and stole the alchemy formula and delivered it to this place and made the dock safe. You know, someone did all these things, and now this big bad guy has the ability to distribute super drugs into the city. Who could have done that? And the players are just listening. They're like, oh, yeah, who could have done that?
When you lay it out like that, I mean, you make it sound like I did it all at once. I mean, I first I went and I got the thing, and then I got the other thing. Nobody told me they were going to assemble it all into some crazy Heisenberg experiment to kill the city. I just thought I was picking up random stuff from random locations.
So when you kind of DM, like, what's your do you have any specific ways that you kind of operate, like any ways that you go about planning things, or sort of working with players? Like, is there anything that you find to kind of be specific, like uniquely your style?
I don't know that I can say that it's uniquely mine, but the general way that I'll write a campaign is that I will just write down things that I find are interesting when I'm not playing. So if I'm watching a movie and there's a particular plot twist in that film that I really, really like, or if I'm reading a book and there's kind of an interaction between characters that I really, really like, or, you know, if I'm reading a comic book and there's just some weird ethical quandary in there that I like, I'll take that and I'll write it down in kind of vague senses, and I'll break it down into parts, and I'll be like, well, why is that an interesting ethical quandary? Why is that an interesting interaction? And then how can I foster something like that in my campaign? When it comes to my storylines, I'm a big fan of flowcharts. I make a lot of flowcharts.
So do I.
Then I revise them. I mean, I'll do a rough flowchart first. So let's say the players are going into a city. I'll have like the main line that goes right down the center, and that's just the spots they need to hit, or the things that are happening in the world that lead to the conclusion with the boss of that particular chapter of the story. From there, I'll shrink it down slightly, I'll rewrite it again, but this time I'll put a couple branches off onto the sides with like side quests, little things that might be of interest, little things that may assist the plot line move along, or just little things for them to get distracted by so it doesn't feel so linear.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I'll usually just keep revising with a couple of twists here, things like that. It's usually a fairly long-winded process, but if I sit down and I work on it, I mean, it's not too hard to just get the rough bones of a 10-session arc mashed out in an evening or two if you really like kind of dedicate a few hours a night to just making the flowchart. And then from there, you just design things a couple days before that they're about to hit. I mean,
yeah. Oh no, I was gonna say I think what you do is a lot very similar to what I do. Is that like my flowchart is the things that I write down are the vignettes, the sort of scenes that they're gonna experience. Like, this is the scene in the alchemist laboratory, and this is the scene in the cult hideout, and this is the and I sort of just connect them based on like what clue are they gonna find here is gonna lead them here. you know? And so I can see, like, this leads to this leads to this, and overall this leads to the conclusion. And then obviously, you know, the chart helps kind of with branching paths, and you can, you know, what I tend to do, I think, is I tend to always have two plot lines that are running at the same time, you know, sort of staggered. So, like, one ends, and another one keeps going, and then a new one starts. Just because, you know, I like the idea that the players are always sort of figuring out which clue and which thing that they're doing kind of goes to which specific plot.
Yeah, that's always fun. I really like that too, where they'll find pieces of information or like an artifact or something like that, and they don't know exactly how it's applicable to any of like the concurrent stories that are running. Because I usually like to have kind of like 3 stories that are running, and they kind of intertwine a little bit. They all have their own separate resolution, but at the same time, the failure to complete one of those or their success affects kind of the way that they're weaved together. Like, they will eventually finally come to a head in the same spot. And I love it when they get those little clues like that where they're like, well, I found this in an unrelated location, but fucking weirdly enough, this seems kind of pertinent to that other thing we were taking a break from working on. Weird.
Yeah.
Why would this be here? And then they get to dig into, like, okay, so how are these two plot lines involved with each other? Why did you find something intrinsic to plot B in plot A location?
Yeah.
When you weren't even working on plot B, why is that there? You know, I love little things like that.
Yeah. The I just did that with there was a thing that I started like way early in the campaign where the players sort of learned, like, they were witness to the escape of a bunch of prisoners, and they've been hunting down, like, they got dossiers and were hunting down all the prisoners, and that kind of got sidetracked by the plot, the main story sort of taking over, because that was sort of a side plot. And they just found, like, the dead body of one of the people they were hunting, and, like, another one was a prisoner in this library. So they're like, why the fuck are these dudes here, and what are they doing, and what does this have to do with what we're doing? And it's gonna reveal to them sort of that there was a mastermind behind the whole thing that they never knew existed. But hopefully the way it's set up, I think is going to be really interesting, because it was a slow burn thing. It was a really, you know, really long thing that I was waiting to come to fruition. But that's just sort of how I write, and I think you and I sort of write a lot of it very, very similarly.
Yeah, I think it's part of being, you know, I'm really jealous of DMs who are loosey-goosey and they can just improvise everything. Like, I'm super jealous of that skill, because I'm a little bit fastidious about stuff. Like, I feel anxious about a campaign if I don't have all my ducks in a row and all my contingencies, you know, like, what if the players don't take a cue right here? I need to look at my little piece of paper and see the arrow that's like, well, if they don't do that, then... And I'm like, okay, I feel better now. I like to have all that sorted out, because on the fly, I always feel like my excuses and my ways for resolving things are ham-fisted. And so in a lot of ways, that fastidious planning is a way to minimize one of my weaknesses as a GM, which for me, I think is improvisation.
If the thing, I think I was the same way, and I think I still am. But I was doing I've been DMing a lot with Encounter Roleplay for about a year now, and because of the thing, because the players tend to go off the rails a lot, and they also have like viewer decisions sort of changing the story every, you know, pretty regularly. It's, you know, when the player, the, you know, viewers sort of throw you this weird suggestion that you're not even remotely expecting or prepared to deal with, it kind of forces you to, or it's forced me at least, to be on my feet and try and work that into the campaign, and not have it, you know, have it blend in and have it make sense and fit, you know, rather than just being like, oh, the players say a giant mech shows up, you walk and there's a giant mech and he's right there. Like, you know, it's up to, you know, I kind of, you know, it keeps me on my toes, and it's definitely been a way to exercise what I definitely consider, you know, a weakness of mine, which is that kind of improvisation. I tend to scramble when I have to improv something, and fix it in post, you know, like whatever I end up you know, just blurting out, I'll kind of go back in and I'll sort of write contingencies and stuff to make what I said fit the story.
Yeah, I come up with random events, too. I think my entire last stream with Roll For It last Wednesday, that entire thing was more or less improv. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do, so sometimes what I'll do is in the middle of my flowchart, I'll have a spot that just says, event from list. And then I have a master list that I keep, like, on Word or a PDF or whatever, where I'll have city events, and there will be, like, 20 of those. And it's just random things for players to involve themselves with. Everything from something stupid, like getting their foot stuck in a mud puddle, to something like somebody getting robbed, where there's clearly a victim, there's clearly an aggressor. Who do they side with in this situation? Do they see this transpire and they keep it to themselves? Okay, well, maybe now I have a little bit of ammo later on. Let's say that they ignored the situation with somebody robbing somebody else. They saw it and they walked away. Not my business. They didn't want to get involved. Well, maybe somebody saw them do that action now. Somebody with power is like, they're non-committal about that particular situation. I thought better of them. And so now the NPC kind of changes the way they interact. Basically, those generic events, I find that they really, really, really help prime the charge for firing off like a storyline, basically. Because if they side with the victim, now potentially they have an ally for later. If I need to bring in an enemy later, well, maybe it was the boss of the guy that was roughing up the innocent victim that was bringing back protection money or something. And that's just something that's scribbled down on a piece of paper. I don't even come up with DCs for it or not. If they roll well enough, I'm just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You intimidate them, Because I'm not expecting a fight to go down right there. Like, I'm expecting them either to make an intimidate check. Sometimes they get creative and they'll be like, well, I cast minor illusion and there's a bear in the alley. And it's like, rawr, and it scares the guy away. But either way, they help the person out, and that's the end result. So now they've got an ally. They've got a potential point of attack from an enemy now or something like that. But yeah, my entire last session, I think, was more or less improvised from one of my event lists. Like, I didn't really have stats for any of the things that they were doing. It was just kind of like I needed something to occupy their time for like an hour or two, just to like make them feel like they weren't doing something linear or they weren't being railroaded in between locations. Yeah. And I think it's fun to have random stuff come up. From just a little list.
Yeah, it's it depends on the pace that you're telling the story, but it's good sometimes to sort of make time for like just sort of like events that aren't connected to the plot. They're just sort of happening in the world, Yeah. They run into a person or a shopkeeper is particularly engaging or, something like that. And it's a good time as a DM to sort of, you can throw that out there. You don't have to think about it because it's a very simple thing. You don't have to worry about clues or connections. So it gives you time to sort of get your thoughts straight for what's coming next.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And that's one of the reasons why I do those events is sometimes
you just need to collect your thoughts.
Yeah, sometimes I got nothing for like the next session. Like, I know roughly what they're going to be doing, but I don't feel like improvising the entire session. And so I'm just like, all right, well, here's a little breadcrumb trail off to one of my little events that I've prepared on my little list. And I'm amazed consistently by how often players can spend hours just working on like a weird distraction that came up while they were walking through a forest or while they were like trudging through a bog. Something weird happened. And they just spend a bunch of time being like, well, I want to know what this is.
Yeah.
So what's going on with that?
By the way, I missed it before, and I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. Thank you so much to Belial 007 and Wishbringer 75 and Misric for joining us. Thank you for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Friends, thank you for hanging out with us. So we're kind of coming up on the top of the hour. What do you say we kind of take things, because we got a bunch of people hanging out, and I know all these. I'm sorry. A lot of people have sent in like some really cool ideas about what we were talking about. Rufengrad was saying the same thing. That he finds himself much more improvisational game GM, and he sort of envies the way that people can play out a more structured things. Obviously, Skagith is talking about how he does a ton of prep work, but doesn't really prep per session. It's mostly like the prep work for the world, which I think is something I'm working on right now. I'm just starting a new homebrew campaign, so all of my prep work is going to be world building, but not session building as it tends to be. Because I'm going to try and focus on, the session-to-session stuff. Thank you, X-Sir, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Yeah, definitely Skagith. How to DM is find your way that works. That's what I tell everyone is there's no right way to do it. Find what you need to do to feel comfortable and do that.
The only way you know that you're doing it wrong is if your players aren't having fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
If players aren't having fun, then just vary up your style a little bit. Let them have fun. It's all about the players.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should, when I say do what you need to feel comfortable, like, get yourself to a position where you can sort of sit down, run your session, and everyone's having a good time. and then find the things that you can work on, like find the things that you feel you need to improve and practice those. But always make sure, because if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel confident, don't do it. It's take the time that you need to get there. So it's kind of the top of the hour, and we're gonna switch things over, as Dice Thulu is gonna tell you right about now. ! Fuzzy in the chat. Fuzzy, you guys are hanging out on the Fuzzy Dice Show, the Dungeon Master Show, which is your weekly hangout for kind of discussion and questions and answers. So we're gonna spend the second hour here taking your questions and topics from chat. If you have them, please feel free to throw them in chat, and we will try and get to all of them. If you want to make sure I see them, just tag @Exploding Dice, or just put like a question in big caps right in front of it, and I will do my best to get to all of those as I can. If we have a lot, we may have to rush through some, but definitely throw your questions in chat. We will be happy to take them. For those of you who are just joining us, my name is Askren, and I'm hanging out with my friend Splattercat Games, talking Dungeon Master stuff and just having a grand old time. And why? Oh, I thought for some reason Ankbot froze, but it hadn't. So absolutely. And if you haven't already, please hit that retweet link. Tell everyone that you are hanging out with us. Thank you, Wayne June, for the retweet. You are an awesome dude. Wayne June, if you don't know, is the voice actor for the narrator in Darkest Dungeon, and also a friend of mine. Yeah, he's really, really cool.
What?
Yeah, he's awesome. I love him.
How a life is taken.
I wish I could. I think I try and do, like, he's one of the guys that I kind of try and do voices for, but I don't think I can't manage it. It's just I don't have that kind of range.
It's too comic. It's kind of like the narrator from Bastion. It's just like, what can you do with a voice that just like stands out like that? You know? It's just like, like you are that guy forever. You are now the narrator from Darkest Dungeon.
Well, he was doing a lot of people don't know, but he was doing H.P. Lovecraft audiobooks before he was that guy, the Darkest Dungeon guy.
Huh.
And if you are into H.P. Lovecraft, I highly suggest all of his readings, because they are awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. They're great. Chat box, let's do that. Quintus says, warm-up question. What are your favorite game snacks and drinks?
Softballs, all right.
Yes, absolutely.
No stress today. Well, I'll let you go first. It's your show.
Oh man, that is some pressure. For snacks, now, okay, so are we talking like just in general? Are we talking like at a D&D table or at like an online game table? Because when I'm online, like, I can eat whatever. I can eat fucking like I can eat tacos and no one can stop me. And but I tend to I don't know, man. I like chips and like a good bag of Ruffles chips and like what the hell, like onion dip. This is good for me. I'll rock some of that.
Dip's delicious.
What about you?
So I have my drink selections. I'm never too far away from like some Pepsi. That's like my life addiction. And then also I drink a lot of Arnold Palmer. I love Arnold Palmer while I'm gaming for some reason. And so something about just like iced tea with lemonade and it makes me happy. As far as snacks go, I like sugar wafers if it's going to be like a weekend fun thing with everybody else. Like from, if you're actually around a gaming table, I'll usually bring like some sugar wafers or maybe, some snacks that don't need to be refrigerated like you. I enjoy potato chips. I like the biscuits and gravy Lays. Those ones are amazing.
I've never had those.
Oh, they're so good, man. You got to give it. They're regional, though. That's the thing, is they're hard to get a hold of depending on where you're at. Like, they didn't have them here where I live until probably about 6 months ago, and then they started showing up everywhere. We also got the Canadian flavor, the ketchup flavored ones. We just got those.
I've definitely seen those. I don't know. We don't get anything cool here in New York, so.
They're called, like, I forget what it's called. They've like the Fixins or something like that. I don't know. There's a particular Canadian name for ketchup chips, and I don't know.
I don't know. We definitely have ketchup chips though. If you guys have never watched the Jade Region campaign here on the Exploding Dice channel, we have drinking rules. So my drink of choice is anything that I can't, I can't pass up like a Yingling or a good beer. I try not to drink liquor on stream because
Mistake. Abort.
I know my players and my viewers would definitely love if every time someone rolled a nat 1, or a nat 20, I took a drink, or every time we kind of follow or something, but I can't do it. So I just usually bring home a nice, interesting 6-pack. I had Optical Illusion the other week.
Optical Illusion.
Yeah, it's pretty
These
good.
These microbrewers coming up with all kinds of names.
Optical Illusion is Blue Point Brewery, which is not that microbrewer. They happen to be local here to where I live, so I just bought it. I just grabbed a 6-pack. Yingling, fuck yeah, definitely. Salt and vinegar chips. Oh man, I think we're just gonna have this chat turn into like, what's your favorite?
Can't do it. Salt and vinegar chips, man. I can't. When I eat salt and vinegar chips, my eyes like squint a little bit. I'm just like, I don't like them.
Oh
Like
Lord.
Like in Elf when he gets the perfume sprayed in his mouth. That's basically my reaction when I eat salt and vinegar chips. Just, I don't like it.
Well, since we we did get a question from Belial, who said, as a DM, if you see a player that seems to consistently fail a check, would you try and help them out? From the reaction in chat, I assume that's an inside joke.
Yeah, my character, so in Dark Heresy you have an ability called Psyniscience.
Yeah.
Which is basically you reach out into the ether and you're scanning the immaterium for any psychic emanations or anything, and my character always fails it consistently. He has tons of points in it. Like, I think he has like a 20% chance of failing whenever he uses it. He has failed it every time for like 17 sessions. It's just like, what do you do? But on the serious half of that, actually, yeah, I do that all the time with D&D. If a player rolls shitty on something that I think is plot viable, I'm probably still gonna give it to him.
What I tend to do in that situation is, like, when a player rolls like if I say roll perception, right? And especially the player that I particularly want to notice something rolls like they roll like a 9. What I tend to do is I tend to act a little bit, in the sense that, like, I act like no one succeeded, but I give them a little bit of information that they sort of have to weave into their own clue,
Yeah.
So it's like, not, if they're walking through the forest and they're supposed to see like something running past the trees, I'd be, everyone roll perception, and let's say no one rolled well, I'd be like, you guys aren't really paying attention, but like, Jimmy, you think out of the corner of your eye, you just see like a flash of white, over there, and you don't really know, and you turn your head and it's gone,
Yep.
And it's like, they're like, they know they didn't do well, but but you give them something that they can kind of work on themselves.
Yeah, I call it failing forward is honestly the way that some GMs are very, very adamant about the fact that if you failed the roll, like, fuck you don't get what you want.
Oh, yeah.
Like, some GMs are really hardcore about that. I tend to use, like I said, failing forward. Like, if you fuck up a plot critical roll, I don't see any reason why everything you've worked for up to this point should just be hosed. Because, like, you've done the right things, you've laid in the prep work, you've done the leg work, you've succeeded in the combats or whatever. It feels overly cruel to me to essentially cut off their link to the storyline right here. Just because, like, this was supposed to be a rudimentary check, that anybody could have made, even if they don't have the proficiency. And yet, for some reason, all 5 party members roll like a 5.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, that was really, I didn't expect that to happen statistically. Like, this was already a really, really easy DC. So I'm more likely to be like, yeah, you're really, you're confused about what you're seeing right now. But you feel like it's important, so that they know they should probably take it with them then.
Yeah.
You feel like this is important to your investigation, but you can't make head or tails of it. That way they take it back to town, maybe they find a mage or an NPC or something like that, and they plop it down on the table and they go, help us. So if they're not cut off from the storyline, like, they still collected the thing, but all their work up to that point hasn't been just for jack shit, because that always frustrates me as a player.
Yeah, I would definitely never want to sort of take players off of a path to solving or going where they wanted or finding what they needed because they didn't roll well, because again, it's the roles should determine, like, the roles should be there, I think, to empower the players, even when they fail. And if no, so the thing that's important to remember, and this is I think newer DMs who are struggling with this particular issue might not necessarily understand completely, is the players don't know what they're rolling for. They don't know what that perception check was for. So if you say, oh, okay, you rolled a 5, but you just kind of notice, there's there's a thing here, and like if you give them a little bit, it's not, they're gonna feel like, okay, there's probably something more that I missed, but at least I have a rope, a thread to pull on, and yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, finish. It's fine.
I was just gonna say, and you're not like, you're not saying like, okay, you failed. What do you do next?
To me, that's the worst thing a GM can do, because it's the equivalent of watching an episode of like Star Trek, or like Firefly, or whatever your show is. Imagine if the party in any of those shows hit like a point, and like something goes wrong, and then just the credits rolled, and they were like, "That's it. The party fails. You can't go any further." They go back to the ship and they fly away feeling dejected. Like, that's not fun for the player.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing a DM can do is when they fail, you just go like, yeah, there's nothing there. Like, well, it depends how critical that roll was. If it's something like a perception check when they're walking through the middle of a field or whatever, and they're just being careful, yeah, just be like, you don't see anything. That's fine, because walking through a field is not a critical objective.
Yeah. I think the thing about, and the thing that a lot of DMs will definitely agree on, is like, if you're doing something where they absolutely need to succeed a roll in order to continue the story, then don't make them roll for it, Because if them failing is, if you don't know how to necessarily deal with them failing the roll, then it shouldn't be a roll, Mm-hmm. A roll should be something where both the positive and the negative contribute in some way, meaningful way, to the story. Otherwise, just don't do it, because if you need them to go into the room and spot a thing that's in that room, well then just once they've spent enough time kind of tossing furniture or whatever, like, just let them find it. Otherwise, if they need to get that key to open the door later in the dungeon, but they never say, like, I want to roll perception check to search for hidden compartments in the wall, or loot, and they don't find the key, and they just leave the room, and they can't proceed in the dungeon, like,
yeah,
what are you gonna do? They're just gonna get there, and they're gonna be like, well, now we gotta go back? Like, what?
Yeah, so, and then they end up, like, if you're playing, a video game, that would be the point where you get stuck for an hour or so, and you're like, well, maybe I should look on GameFAQs, or maybe I should Google this real fast, but you can't do that with a tabletop game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in general, advancement, I never require my characters to find, if there's one door out of the dungeon that leads to the objective that they have, there may be like sub-objectives that lead to the key, but once they're in like the boss's bedroom or whatever looking for the key, just make sure it's sitting like right on top of the desk or something like that. Like, yeah, you have to suspend disbelief a little bit. Like, the boss would leave that sitting right on his desk when he knows that goes to the lab that he doesn't want anybody to know about.
Yeah, but
like, at the same time, what, you gonna hide it from them and require like an 18 DC, investigation roll, and then they don't find it and they're just cut off from it entirely? Like,
I mean, my favorite thing about, like, D&D isn't real is the fact that every time you find like a journal or something, like, you only care about one page. Like, the one page, the handout, is the one that has all the expository information on it, but the rest of the book is just, because no DM's gonna sit down and write a whole book. Like, it's always the last page that has the information that you need.
That's how you mess with your DM, is after he reads you the page or gives you the handout for the page that you want, you'd be like, what's on the next page?
What's in the rest?
I flipped the page. Yeah, I flipped the page. What's on the next one? And he just gives you that look, and rocks fall, you die.
It's blank.
Yeah.
It's a journal with one page.
You see cryptic runes. They start to glow. You're hit in the face with a fireball. Stop asking dumb questions.
Oh man, I wanted to get to Firebringer's question. He says, "What is your dream setting, aka the one you've always wanted to run but have never or could never find a group to do it?"
I would say for me it was Shadowrun. It is really difficult to get people into Shadowrun because it is a complicated ass game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a game that has a lot of dice rolling. It's got a lot of systems that are very, very confusing to a new player. Like, trying to explain to a new player how to be a decker is one of the most frustrating experiences ever. It's like, well, there's hosts and there's slaves, but they're all run through like this thing over here, and if you want to do that, like if you look at the quick cheat sheet for decking that Reddit has sat down and they've tried to simplify decking as much as possible. It's still 4 fucking pages long all like flowcharts and shit, and it's just like that's the simplest anybody can get it down to. And you're trying to explain that to a new guy, and he's just like, I don't want to play anymore.
I've had 3 DMs specifically on here to talk about Shadow, and like fucking Lauren from Hyper RPG and like 2 other people. And the thing that the most common thing I hear is I ban deckers before we even do character creation. I just ban them.
I mean, I think that's a pretty good plan. Honestly, we ran for a little while. This was before the errata was released for Technomancers that fixed them and actually made them the deckers equal. We ran it for a little bit where we just had a contact, and he was wired into the net, and it was just understood. You send him 500 new yen, and he will do whatever thing within reason you ask him to do, and it just gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's simple, and it sped the gameplay up so much. Instead of being like, all right, so I'm in AR, what do I see? Well, you see the icons of cars, you see icons disguised as guns and lollipops, you see 5 cameras on this floor, and he's like, all right, so now I need to do matrix perception to find the host. Okay, so, and during that time, the entire rest of the party is just sitting there scratching their
waiting, yeah.
We're all standing here with assault rifles, getting ready to like break through a door, just standing on the side of the street like, cool, yeah, it's hard to suspend disbelief, like, because in Matrix, this is all happening like instantaneously, like thousands of things per second. But in real lifetime, the other players are all sitting there just being like, I'm gonna go get a soda, I'm gonna go get a bathroom break, I'm bored.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a lot of settings that I like, that I really enjoy. You know, I have wanted to do a Ravenloft game for a really long time. I want to probably do something in Eberron at some point, maybe Dark Sun. Like I'm just enamored by all these things, but I've never really I've never really had a chance to, because I don't know, I've been doing other things. But the new game that I'm starting, I'm really excited because as a DM, I love horror, and there's been a lot of stuff that's been inspiring me recently. And I said recently that I was really inspired by Curse of Strahd and how everyone was doing it. Like, it did this real cool horror element, like, really well. And I wanted to DM it, but I felt kind of it was a bit passé at this point because everyone's fucking done it. So what I did was I wanted to sit down and write my own horror setting. And I'm not really giving away any details. I did actually announce this on Sunday, so I can technically talk about it. We have a new show coming to the channel on Saturdays, and the show is called The Writhing Moon, and it is sort of a horror setting that is loosely based on a lot of games and writing that I've enjoyed. If people want to kind of get an idea of what the setting is, it's sort of somewhere between Darkest Dungeon and Bloodborne and BioShock. It's kind of a mashup of all 3 of those things.
That's cool.
With a lot of sort of nightmare and body horror and intrigue and stuff going on. So it's, for me, that's like a dream thing. Like, I can put anything I want into that horror wise, and I can just go nuts, and I'm really looking forward to it. So hopefully that will be my dream setting once it's all finished.
Yeah, they need to make a samurai tabletop game. Like,
there's lots.
There are?
Yeah. Oh god, what the fuck? Legend of the Five Rings?
See, I need to be a samurai. That's what I need to be. My life would be better if I was a samurai.
Legend of the Five Rings is all about like caste system, and there is a specific caste that is just samurai dueling, and like when they duel, like they get their fights take like an hour. Because it's literally just modifiers on top of modifiers on top of attacks on top of modifiers, and it's like if they're dueling someone who's not set up, who's not the same caste as they are, they'll just fuck them up. Like, they'll fucking quick draw on their ass and just cut them to pieces. But if they're fighting each other, it'll fucking take an hour. Yeah, Rufengrad says Legend of the Five Rings is really neat. It's really cool. It was just too complicated for me. You can piss off people just by being the wrong cast and saying the wrong thing. It's too intense. I couldn't do it.
So basically, the game has like a culture that you've got to learn.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
you can like fuck it up by not reading the rulebook well enough.
Oh, it's hardcore. Yeah, if you want to see the best explanation given, Spoonie did a video on his channel, on his Counter Monkey series. He did a video on Legend of the Five Rings, so he can explain it better than I can. But it's cool. It's just way too complicated. Bird vs. Plane says, not so stress-free. What's a great disappointment that you've had as a DM, i.e. a plot that didn't come through, or an NPC you were stoked about that fell flat, and what did you learn or change about your DMing from this?
I think mine's actually going to be a little bit meta. I think that the biggest disappointment for me in DMing is just when people fall off. Like, you get the game all set up, you get everything moving, you play the first couple sessions, and then just like people stop showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, for me, that's one of those situations where it's hard not to reflect on yourself and be like, all right, well, did I not make it interesting enough? But in reality, what it comes down to a lot of the time is just I didn't talk to players and realize that they're just maybe not into tabletop gaming or something like that. But I was so enthusiastic about DMing the tabletop game that I tried to talk them into it or whatever. And then after the first couple sessions, when they figured out it wasn't their thing, they just kind of extricated themselves without anything further from the game. And then you're left with like two people that want to play, but you can't really have a campaign with like two people. And so I would say that's probably one of the more disappointing things. If you wanted to get into game, I mean, realistically, I think that as a DM, I tend to be pretty easygoing as far as I don't tend to get disappointed very much as a DM because it's the path to the dark side. Like, I just want to see the players play things out and do things their own way. There are little frustrations, but it's like he said, I can't think of anything specific right now. But it's like stuff where they just won't take a goddamn quest queue or something. Like, they just flat out, you spend time on a storyline, it gets pitched to the players, and they're just like, eh.
Yeah.
And they just go back to the tavern. I've had that happen before, and it's just like, well, shit, now what do I do?
I think my greatest disappointment as a DM tends to stem from some times when I've written a campaign and like in my head the detail, like the setting is like I take the setting seriously, I take the details seriously. I'm trying to convey things in a serious atmosphere, and then it's like as soon as you say someone's name, someone's like, his name is like Dungus or whatever. Like it's you know, and they like or they don't take things like every. And you know, I don't know, when players don't take things seriously, like to me it kind of. Like I'm sitting there thinking like, all right, did I not convey this right? Did I not, you know, did I mess up somewhere? Is the writing bad? You know, is it? But
I think some people, like, they just don't know how to. I've seen that a lot DMing, where you've always got like that player who just can't like, fucking hang it up, you know, like, this is not like stand-up comedy session. Like, things are supposed to be fun. You can participate in things that are happening and like make jokes and like one-liners and stuff like that, but I call them like I fart players. Like, they're the kind of people who are like, all right, we go to the quest giver, and then they're asking all the serious questions, and then you have like that one guy that's like, my character farts, you know. It's just like, it's supposed to be serious. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I try and his question specifically is about how you know any steps you took to remedy this, and I definitely think things like that are the reason that when I'm starting a new game, when I'm working with new people, I always sit down and I always explain to them before I've even kind of accepted them into the group. You know, before I've said like, okay, you're playing. What I do is I tell them exactly what's going on in my head. So if I say like in my head I'm planning on running like a dramatic, you know, intrigue campaign, you know, it's going to be very serious, there's going to be horror stuff in it, it's, you know, it's not going to be like, oh, we're just going to roll around making jokes at everything. I'll tell them that right up front, because if that gives players a chance to say like, you know what, I don't really think that's for me, I think that's maybe not my cup of tea, or they can say like, yeah, I'm really into that, like this is how I, you know, will do things, like, so it definitely has encouraged me to sit down and make sure that before I do anything, I make sure that me and my players are all on the same page. Like, we all know what we're signing up for. We all know what we're getting into. Because, and I think that's a good idea with anything. It's especially so now because, when I just finished casting a whole bunch of people, and like most of them are not experienced role-playing game streamers. They're, some of them may be actors, some of them may be entertainers, but they, you sort of have to make sure that they know what they're getting into. Like, it's slightly different than like any other D&D game that you're going to be a part of, because there's other things that are going on and that are flying around, and you have to. So yeah, definitely talking to players is, making sure you're on the same page, is huge for me now. And another thing I think is another simpler thing is just having players buy into the plot as a whole. Like having players be connected to the entire sort of train of the campaign, because it's very easy for them to sort of make a background and for you to just be like, okay, but that doesn't come into play at all, so can you just get on the campaign and we'll just go and leave your background behind. So it's, I work very hard now to sort of make sure players, like, they have NPCs that they've created that connect them to the campaign world, and that we're sort of bringing those in, and we're kind of we're making things for them to do later on that keep their backstory relevant, and who they, keep them connected to the campaign.
I think that so 2 points there. I definitely agree with you on, selecting the right players for the right session. And I've always been a fan of, the best tool that a DM has is not like the player handbook or the DM handbook. The best tool you have as a DM is communication.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the problems I've ever seen in a campaign are because the DM or the players just didn't address it. They ignore it, and they keep on trucking, and then it becomes like this little festering kind of wound, know? And it grows over time because nobody addresses it. If you sit down with players up front and you're honest with them and you're like, hey, I want to play a tabletop game, I'm willing to GM, this is the theme, this is the setting, this is kind of the world you're going to be playing in, is that okay with all of you? Because if you agree to this, then that's going to come with certain ramifications with the way that the game is played and the culture of the world and everything else. And if you don't like it, that's cool. I can find a replacement, and, we don't have to have any drama or anything like that. I was just simply asking. On the second half, I agree with you with regards to the plot moving forward. I like to think of it kind of like the plot is a train that's moving through, and the players can see that train going through, and your job is to convince them that they want to hop on that train. Like, they want to be up. Like, they can watch it unfold from a distance, but your job as a DM is to make them want to be like, yeah, let's hop on that train and see where it goes, you know, rather than just passively watching it happen in the distance.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways you can go about doing that. But I think, my main tip when it comes to dealing with players, first of all, always communicate. Always talk with your players, about everything. One of the things that's been a huge help for me, because I notice I've sort of, players sometimes have trouble keeping their character consistent across the span of a campaign. And so one of the things I really like doing these days is when we start a campaign, I'll sit down and I'll ask a player when they give me a character sheet. It's like, okay, who is this person? What are their beliefs? What are their goals? What are their priorities? So, like, at level 1, and I kind of tend to say this a lot, like, what is, let's say you have a level 1 character and his goal is to be the best swordsman in the world, and his priority is just to show off his skill in front of anyone so he can make a name for himself, right? Okay, that's who he is at level 1. That's who you sort of envision your character arc being. But when the first session starts and when we start rolling with the campaign, you can't necessarily predict what's going to happen. You can't foresee those things. Events are going to happen. You're going to experience things that you weren't expecting, and you're going to see some things and do some things that you weren't planning on doing. So how do we make sure that the character, we keep an eye on the character? We'll come back at level 5, let's say. And at level 5, we'll sit down and say, okay, this is who you started out with. Your character has been to some places, he's done some things, he's seen some things, a lot of unexpected things happen to him. Is he still the same person he was? Are his priorities still the same as they were? Because maybe he doesn't care about being the best swordsman in the world anymore. Maybe he found an NPC that he really wants to make sure stays safe. Or maybe he really cares about making sure his city isn't destroyed by orcs. Like, you ask, like, okay, so these things happen, what are your priorities now, so we can make sure that you as a player keep your eye on those going forward, and you don't lose sight of your own character, and you can keep that character evolving, because for me, the coolest thing about playing a character is the character arc.
Yeah. That's what it was always, when you're playing like a normal tabletop game, that's what I actually really, really, really like about playing on Twitch, is that you get a VOD. It's very, very easy to forget the little interactions and events that happen if you play a game with people for like a year. But when you play online with an audience and everything, you now have the VOD. So you can go back and you can be like, yeah, my character in that situation, okay, I can see where he was coming from. Let me recenter my character, get him back to where, he's being consistent. I do think that communication is a good idea. So far as at Roll For It, we do something very, very similar. Before we start a campaign, sometimes in the middle of a campaign, we'll have conversations about, assuming that like Enter Elysium is the GM. If I have a particular idea for my character, a particular situation that I want to see him put in, or if I feel like there's a good plot hook for his background, I'll feed that to the GM. I'll just shoot him a message.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, based on my ideals and my character, I think it'd be really cool if there was a plot that involved like these themes, because it would really, really help him stand out. And everybody at Roll For It does that because it helps make a better storyline. Because sometimes the DM isn't quite sure how to ruffle your character's jimmies.
We're as DMs, we're never sure of what a player feels like is feeling for their character. I've had players talk. They started their character where like their family or their parents was a big part of their background, and then it's like when it came time to address those issues, it's like, How do you? I don't know how you want to handle these in games. Do you want to have that sort of role playing interaction with your family? Do you want to sort of like? Do you want to leave them out of it? Like, how do you want to handle these things? And so as a DM, I love when players come to me and offer me suggestions about like what they're thinking about their character, or what they're interested in. Like, I would love it if I had to travel to my to fight an old family member, or if or if he if something came from from the past that he had to work out. And as a DM, sometimes I really like when players will just they don't even necessarily have to tell me up front. They can just sort of start doing it in game. One of the most interesting things a player ever did to me, this was really early on in my DM career, was he told me, he said, we're gonna start the game, and I'm just going to go, everyone that I think has information, I'm just going to ask about a man with a burned face. I'm going to ask if they've seen, if they have any information. And he said, I don't know who that is. I don't know what they want, where they are. I just know that they, I have scars, and, I have, or they killed my family or something like that. Whatever. And so that's it. He just says, I'm just going to ask, and you fill in the rest. And as a DM, like, I think that was one of the most interesting and powerful tools that I ever experienced, because it's like the players essentially giving you free reign to craft them a narrative, and they're already bought into it. No matter what you do.
That's one of the best things you can possibly do, is just so we're if we're spitballing a new cast of characters, I'll flat out say at the start so that the DM knows. Let's assume we're playing Shadowrun or D&D or whatever. Before we play the first session, I'll let the DM know my character is aligned in this way. He cares about this, this, and this. And morally, these are the things he will not do. Feel free to use that to your advantage, or to, spike him up situations. However you want to use that. But if you pitch a quest that morally is against my character's alignment, it's going to take a lot more than a persuasion check to get him on board, because he's flat out not going to be a part of it. Or if it's working against something that idealistically he is at odds with, he's not going to play the game. He's just going to be like, no, I'm out. And he's going to go back to the tavern. Or he's going to go back to, he's not going to take his cut. He's not going to help the party. He'll excuse himself for a session or two, and he just won't want to know about it because you're doing something, that he doesn't agree with.
Yeah.
And that helps the DM out by... We've had this happen on Roll For It before, where the DM isn't quite sure what the players are into or whatever. You write a storyline. The storyline gets pitched by the quest giver, or, the Johnson, or the Inquisitor, or whoever it is, and everybody in the party just kind of scratches their head and goes, I don't care about this. That's like a really, really bad thing that can happen for a DM, and you avoid that by players proffering information. Come out, be very, very vocal, be like, my character flat out will not do this. Like, there are things that he just does not care about. They don't matter to him. It doesn't matter how much coin you slide across the table. He's not influenced by money. Or he won't, do anything that involves the kidnapping or harm of children. Or, there's just like things that are off the table for him. And letting your DM know helps them so that they don't waste their time designing something that your player won't have any part in.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge tip for players: just be vocal. Be open with your DM, because you have an idea for a character arc, but the DM can't read minds. Let them in on that and build something together, and it'll be it. As long as you build something together, it'll be great.
Our rule for Roll Forward is we write backstories beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't do that with our first campaign, and we all agreed that was probably one of the biggest starting mistakes we ever made, was that we just kind of jumped right into it. We played our characters kind of off the cuff and just kind of made it up as we went. Before we start a campaign now, we write like a 1-page, 1.5-page backstory for our characters with important people, things that have happened up until the point where they start the campaign, the way that they've reacted to certain situations, what their ideals, beliefs are. And frankly, it helps things roll a lot better. It really, really does. Just that little piece of information from every player, it just keeps you from wasting your time as a DM.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to grab some of these other questions here. Roofengrad says, similar to Firebringer, Axel, are there any RPG systems that are sort of on your list that you haven't, or you may have not had the opportunity to play yet?
I really want to play the new Fantasy Flight Star Wars. I really, really want to play it. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, a lot
Fantasy
of people
Flight,
have been saying that.
I mean, there's very few companies that do quality control like Fantasy Flight does, and so I'm always interested to see what they do when they come up with a tabletop rule set, because they tend to make very, very good products. I think Fantasy Flight is one of the few companies right now that can actually compete with Wizards when it comes to making well-honed, well-refined game systems that appear to have had a lot of the kinks worked out. And so I'm really, really interested in playing the Fantasy Flight Star Wars tabletop.
Yeah. If there were any that I'd say that were on my list, obviously I want to test out Kingdom Death and see if it's as interesting as it looks visually. Definitely, I'm definitely interested in playing, Shadow of the Demon Lord is a cool one that came out recently. That just intrigued the hell out of me. Maybe something like maybe like a retro clone like Legends of the Flame Princess is also really interesting to me. I mean, I tend to not. I'm not crazy about sci-fi systems too much. It's never really rung my bell, role playing wise. But it's. I probably I would definitely like to get into some Warhammer, maybe 40K role playing, just because I grew up on Warhammer 40K. And it's I haven't had a chance yet. I've played some Warhammer Fantasy, which tends to be a horrible mess of people just failing everything over and over and over.
Yeah, Dark Heresy is similar. Like, even if you're a leveled up character, it's basically 50-50 on most rolls. Like, it's essentially, if you've got points into something, I'm like, congratulations, you've graduated from 1/3 of a chance of succeeding to flipping a coin every single time you roll.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah, I was trying to do, I was playing a marathon session of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and I was there, trying to do dramatic, cool things, and then, realizing that it doesn't matter because I'm not going to hit with my crossbow anyway.
I think that,
go ahead. Oh, sorry, I was...
Yeah.
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh. I think with systems like Fantasy and 40K, with what Fantasy Flight has done with those, actually, I think it's still Black Library for Warhammer Fantasy tabletop, right? Warhammer Fantasy RPG?
I don't know offhand. I have an old version of the rulebook in PDF.
Yeah, I don't think they've rewritten that one. I think that's a dead game, unless you've got the books for it. But
huge book, by the way.
Yeah, I think the onus is really on the DM with those games, because your success chance is so low on most things.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that with the books, you get no DMing advice.
Yeah.
Like, the books don't have a lot of DMing advice in them, whereas with D&D, you get, an entire book that's dedicated just to DMing, which is a huge helpful thing if you've never done it before. The thing with DH and with Warhammer Fantasy is I think it's up to the DM to add bonuses. And if you've got a DM who thinks you just play it straight across the table, where it's just like, oh yeah, roll a flat, ballistic skill, you're gonna have a lot of trouble succeeding at things. You got to have the DM that is like generous, and he's like, all right, well, it's a clear day, the enemy's out of cover. Give yourself a plus 20, and then you start actually like making progress.
Well, that's also it. Like I remember, I was, I was dying. I had just taken a fatal wound from like a mutant or something, and I was like on my last breath, and I had like I was lying on my back, and I just kind of wanted to do this cool thing where I just like managed to summon enough strength to shoot my crossbow and like take something out, and hopefully destroy it, blow up this enemy or something like that. And it's just like roll, fail, okay, next turn, and I'm just sitting there thinking, and you're definitely right, and it's like the game is supposed to be about yes, people are gonna die, but it's supposed to be like heroically, it's supposed like if you're gonna go down in a ball of flames, like at least let it be cool,
No, yeah, I agree. I really agree with the rule of cool. Like in that situation, if I was DMing, your character is fucking dying.
Yeah.
Like, he's leaving the campaign at this point. Yes, if you want to do something awesome on your way out, do the awesome thing. You don't need to roll for it. You're fucking dead after this.
Yeah.
Make it as awesome as you want to make it, and I'll probably allow it. Because that makes the player feel like their death was both cool, and as a bonus, if the situation is right, it makes their death mean something, which is a huge staple. Pointlessly.
Which is a huge staple, by the way, of Warhammer literature. People dying for a thing that they do something cool while they die that helps win the battle or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, lots of. I grew up on tabletop Warhammer 40K, so definitely, if I had time for it, I would probably play some of that. Also, there's a game, Fantasy Craft, I think, that bills itself as like the fixed version of Pathfinder or 3.5, like the actually good version, but it's so crunchy and no one knows it exists that it's like...
Isn't that proclamation funny, though? Because, like, Pathfinder was billed as, like, the thing that fixes 4.0.
No, I don't think it was. No, Pathfinder was built as a continuation of 3.5 because Wizard. So Paizo was actually made up of like Paizo was a company that was publishing the Dungeon and the Dragon magazines back when Wizards was in 3.5 days and when Wizards went on to 4th edition. And when Wizards went on to 4th edition, they started publishing those magazines themselves, and Paizo just decided to take the OGL and just spin it into their own thing. And I specifically know that back when it started, someone told, I forget who exactly it was, but someone specifically said, like, yeah, of course you can take OGL and try and publish your own system for it, because who the fuck is going to pay for rules that are free? But they did it, and people do, and they have a company now. But the thing about it is, even though Pathfinder is a mostly broken system and has a lot of fiddly bits to it, Paizo does they put a lot of content out, whether artwork, adventure pass, modules, things like that are even if you're not into the rules, the content they put out is still worth having as a DM. I think. I mean, I collect the shit out of modules and stuff to rip apart and use in my campaigns.
I never played Pathfinder because I have too much 3.5 stuff, so it's just like, well,
yeah,
I've already got this in all the Splat books. So, I mean, if somebody else wants to bring their books, like multiple copies that we can just pass around, okay. But it's a tough sell for me to go rebuy like an entire system that's so similar.
Yeah, Skag says don't talk bad about Pathfinder to a person who loves it. I have no necessarily love or marriage to the system itself. I think, like Firebringer says, Paizo themselves, I think, is putting out cool material. I like their adventure pass. I like their modules. I like the artwork they put out, this and that. I can give or take the system. I just happen to run it because it was, like, one of the first things I got into. Like, I got into DMing with 4th edition, and then, we just moved on to Pathfinder because people asked me to.
I'm a big fan of AD&D. I'll be honest, like you, like the first thing you play, I think, is the thing that sticks with you.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that you're like, no, this is the right way. This feels like this is the good D&D. All the other D&D is the bad D&D. That's how I feel about AD&D sometimes. But then I have to like reality check myself and be like, actually, 5.0 is pretty dope. fifth edition is really, really legit, and 3.5 was fun too.
Yeah.
I didn't hate 3 either. Like 3 it had its weird spots, but you know.
I don't hate any edition of D&D. I like 5th edition just fine. I also like I like Pathfinder, I like 3.5, I like AD&D, like, because they all do different things well. Like, if you have a group that likes crunch and is really into the rules, 5th edition, like, they like character building and character options and optimization, 5th edition is not going to be their game of choice, I don't think, because there's not a lot to do there with character options. You know, it's kind of very, very, very simple and straightforward. Whereas if you have people that want to that just want to get into the role playing and they don't like complex math, you know, to figure out what bonuses are on what they have to roll and how, you know, this and that, then that's, you know, 5th edition is perfect for that. I think 5th edition is much better on stream because it's so streamlined and simple. Comparatively.
5th edition, I feel like they did a pretty good job at hand waving the things that needed to be hand waved and just be like sorted out at the table.
Yeah.
And then everything else they did a really, really good job. I mean, for the most part, I was surprised when I got my 5th edition books because I was really, really disappointed by 4th. 4th was not something that like I was super enthusiastic about. I think I only ever played like 2 campaigns, and both times it was just like, okay, I'll play just because you need an extra person.
Yeah.
But I'd rather play 3.5 if you have it. But I didn't expect much coming from 4 to 5th, and then 5th actually, I was like, good job.
Yeah,
you did all right, Wizards.
Yeah, my transition into 5th was slow. I wasn't doing it until I was already streaming, and it's, you know, it took me a little while to adopt it, but I use it now specifically because it's just so easy to pick up and run. You know, especially on stream, I think it plays a little better. And since we're talking about it, what's it called? I think Thunder Dyak, I can't find his name now. There we are. Thunder Dyak 7 says, what is your guys' feelings on a game like Blades in the Dark? I don't know if you're particularly familiar with that one.
No, but from the way he described it, I get the rough idea. It sounds like it's something similar to like Tales of Arabian Nights, where you're like, I want to do this thing, and then you turn to a book and you're like, all right, well, this happens and this happens, and you kind of just deal with it along the way.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play Blades in the Dark. If you guys want to see it, I know my friend Eric Vulgaris runs Blades in the Dark. I know It May JP runs Blades in the Dark. Actually, the creator of Blades in the Dark, John Harper, is a friend of mine, and he's been on the show before. It's one of those systems where it's meant to be mechanically simple, but very intense when it comes to the roleplay aspect, because it's all about building your character to have these sort of connections and desires and things like that. And the setting, I think the setting is very integral to the game itself. I can't give exact details on how it's run because I've never really sat down and watched a full session of it. I just don't have the time. But if you like those sort of lightweight roleplay heavy games that are all about character interactions and interacting with the world and and stuff like that, then by all means, it's definitely going to be a good system if the people that I know have adopted it so readily and so have been so interested in it. So yeah, definitely go check out Blades in the Dark and let me know what you think if you do. Distracted Elf has a Twitch stream also. She was just playing on Brad Wodo's stream we were hosting before. So there was a question that I was looking for here. I'm trying to find it now. It was before the Star Wars one. Where is it? By the way, I was reading this and I wanted to point this out. Skagith says, as a DM, you say what the players can expect from you to get from your game, and what they are like. I always ask players, what are you looking for in a game? Like, what is important to you in a campaign? What are the sort of make or break things for you? Because I want to be able, I like knowing those things up front because a player will almost never tell you those things if you don't ask. And, those are, if someone doesn't tell you, if they don't tell you that, oh, by the way, if I don't get a chance to, interact with cool, shopkeepers every time I go into a city, I'm just not going to have that much fun in a game. Well, that's something I definitely want to know up front because, you know, that's something I need to make time for.
It's also something really, really random and niche. Like, that's one of those things that you would, like, never guess about somebody. Like, I want my random NPC reactions to be extra flavorful. Otherwise, I quit!
Yeah. Let me thank you, Nathaniel Jr. Show Gaming, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. No, I love doing shopkeepers, though. You don't understand. Like, if I have the opportunity, I will do and just spend as much time as I can, like, being a shopkeeper and giving them a personality and, like, just using them as a conduit for things, because I love role-playing and I love voicing characters and I love just kind of getting into it, and it's, you know, so if a player doesn't like those kind of things, like, we don't want to deal with shopkeepers, we just want to get in, sell our stuff, and get out, like, I'll probably think, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. But you know, it'll definitely be a bummer for me. If you guys have a question, I'm trying to scroll through and look, but I may have missed some questions. So if you have any, we're gonna take. I think we have time for one more question. So if we'll take one last one. If anyone has one, throw it in chat. If not, I have one that I've been storing up. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think we'll probably take this as a last topic, because someone sent this to me and I want to get to it real quick. Someone says, metagaming, what is it? But Darren SF says, metagaming, what is it? And how do you deal with it? And does it have different acceptable levels?
I'll let you start out, since this is kind of a contentious topic. This can go. I've seen many forum battles erupt over this one.
Okay, so metagaming at a very, very simple level, I tend to try and head it off by cutting off the player's tools to metagame if I can, and that's not in a malicious way. Like, for example, one of the things that I really dislike is when I say, Jim, can you roll a perception check when they enter a room? And he says, okay, roll a perception check. I rolled a 1. And then everyone's like, oh shit, he rolled a 1. Can I roll a perception check too? Or can I search what he was searching? Things like that. Like, when a player rolls something and they know they rolled badly, they know that they failed, but they don't necessarily... It's always going to be in their head. Like, I know there was something to find, but I failed. So I have to do something to not fail. Whether that means getting another player to come in and search also. But the thing about it is, when you roll a 1 on a perception or any check, really, your character doesn't know that he failed. So, I like taking the ability to have that information out of the hands of the players, and sometimes that means making players skill roll, like mental skill rolls, perception, knowledge, you know, charisma checks. The roll result hidden from the players. Roll20 lets me do that using a creative API script, and that means the only thing that they know is the information they're given, and it's up to them. They're exactly in the same place their character is, you know. And so I like when players, for me, doing things like that, taking the meta information away from the players, helps put them more in the moment, and so they can't really rely on stat blocks, and they can't rely on their character sheet. They can only rely on role-playing their way through a situation, which it's weird to get used to at first, but I think once it does, it's definitely been a huge boon for the RP and the kind of the character handling and playing and the in-character stuff in my campaigns.
Okay. Yeah, I feel kind of similarly about metagaming, and I think you and I both use kind of the same technique right there, because I think it's a tried and true way to make sure players avoid it, because I've been with some groups that very much metagame. And so my take on metagaming is simply when your characters are acting not only out of character, but they're acting out of character with the knowledge as though they just read the rulebook, basically. Like, they're going into situations like, oh, but if I do it this way, I get like a +7 or whatever, even though their character might not be of the disposition to do something that way. The example I would give is, like, let's say you have a barbarian, you've written his backstory, where if he sees an orc, he just goes batshit crazy. Like, he has to get to that orc and kill it as fast as possible because of something that happened in his backstory or something like that. He just doesn't like him. But the player playing the orc who wrote that backstory he'll move his character in a very specific way in combat so that he gets like the maximum amount of hits and stuff. Like, there's nothing chaotic or sort of angry about the way that he moved into combat. He did it in a very cool, calculated, strategic way. And I'm like, well, but your backstory dictates, that you fly into a rage when you see an orc. I would count that as being metagaming right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're playing mechanically when it's convenient, essentially. Like, they're like, oh, but yeah, just ignore that for a second. I mean, metagaming is basically just using information that isn't available to your character in order to play him.
Sort of like when someone wants to min-max their barbarian to have like no intelligence but maximum strength, but as soon as they come up to a puzzle, he's like, hey guys, you should totally try this. And it's like, I don't think, like, no, that's not really, that shouldn't really come out of your mouth, because, but do you, so yeah, I think we're probably both in the same, from the same situation. Is like, try and head it off, because if it bothers you, because at least in my opinion, I think I prefer when players play their characters more. I prefer them to sort of be in character and to stay there, and to kind of, because I think that's why they made that character. So I will try and kind of give them tools to help that, if I can. And I think
sometimes you just gotta shut them down too. Sometimes you just gotta be like, that's metagaming. I mean, sometimes you just gotta be like, your character wouldn't know about that. Your character has no reason to do the action you just said, except that you know something is happening that you want to uncover.
Do you now, just a quick addendum, do you consider, like, if a player is acting particularly in character, like, to the point of it being disadvantageous game-wise, but absolutely in character for them to do. Like, I remember, I have a player who's got a barbarian, and he was grappling with this orc barbarian. They were both just rage fighting each other, and I forget at one point the barbarian got disarmed. The orc barbarian got disarmed, and so the player also, like, threw his because he just started punching him, and the player barbarian threw his sword down and just started punching the dude back.
Oh, and I encourage that. That's like how you get inspiration dice and bonus XP in my games.
Yeah.
Because that shows that, to your detriment, you're willing to play out that character's mentality.
Yeah.
If your player has that sense of honor where he's like, my opponent doesn't have a weapon now, well, fuck this sword. And then he goes in and he tries to, fight on your square. I agree with that. That's cool. Like, to me, I'm like, good. Your character has a personality. He has ideals. He has, like, a thing that to him that matters, the line that he will not cross. And add an inspiration dice to your sheet, because I like that,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's like, I like when characters sort of take risks and sort of dive into or when players dive into a character that much that it's like, this is not going to win us the fight. I'm not going to beat this guy by punching him in the face, because it does no damage, and we both have damage resistance, but god damn it, he's punching me, I gotta punch him back,
Yeah.
And so
I love stuff like that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's when players get into those kind of moments. I think that as a DM, like, it's just a little light that goes on in your head that it tells you the players are invested in what's going on around them.
Yeah, I think with the situation with the 3 intelligence character you were talking about, like positing that he knows how the puzzle is solved, I would probably just make him intelligence check for it, and then I'll be like, okay, so I wouldn't tell him whether he succeeded or not, and I'd be like, so what did you want to tell the party? And so after he makes the check, he'll tell the party, and then I'll be like, all right, so idiot translation, based on whatever his role was, he seems to have some weird idea about how this works, but he's really having a tough time conveying it, and he's, like, using his hands, and he's, like, looking at it quizzically, and he's clearly got something on his mind that he wants to convey, but he's just too goddamn stupid to do it.
Absolutely. Oh, man. So that I think that was probably the last question we're gonna have time to, because it was 10 o'clock now. We have run through our allotted time for the show, and we got other things. We got shows to host. We got places to be. We got, I don't know, pizzas to serve.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So before we kind of bring things down and bring things to a close, obviously I want to give a huge shout out and a huge thanks to everyone who has joined us in chat, everyone who's been hanging out with us. Thank you guys for taking time out of your Tuesday to chill and talk D&D and Dungeon Master stuff with us. And of course, a huge thanks to Splattercat Games for hanging out with me. It was a huge pleasure, absolutely. Before we kind of wrap things up and do announcements, do you want to just do some quick hooks and plugs? Let everyone know who you are, where they can find you on the internet, and
Yeah.
anything else?
Down below, I'm part of a role-playing group called Roll For It. It's at Twitch TV/Roll For It. You can actually see it like right below my name right now. If you wanted to check that out, we got 2 campaigns running right now. We've got a Dark Heresy campaign, which is coming to a close. And then on Wednesdays, we've got the D&D 5th edition campaign that we're running right now that is just starting to get to the good, meaty, gooey bits. And so it's pretty fun. I think you'll enjoy it there.
Awesome. And you can go hit him up on Twitter. His Twitter is right on stream, as well as his YouTube link. You should definitely go check that out if anyone wants to, if you want to see more D&D content and also some really cool video game stuff. So, definitely hit him up on Twitter. Thank him for hanging out and spending his Tuesday night with us. So before we go, we have, my name, by the way, if you don't know, is Askren. I'm your host and Dungeon Master here on Exploding Dice. And if you want to hang out with me, it's just !social in chat. You can hit me up on Twitter. It's just twitter.com/Askren. You can keep up with everything that goes on here on the Exploding Dice channel. Well, what does go on, I hear you asking? So let's get into some announcements and tell you a little bit about what we do. First up, obviously, every Tuesday I'm here on the Fuzzy Dice Show bringing in the best of the best in Twitch streamers, D&D podcasters, celebrities, and just everyone that you want to see talking about role-playing game stuff. You can catch us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, 00 Nobby 00, for following. Welcome to the madness, my friend. We also have a live D&D 5th edition campaign called Jade Regent that happens here every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's an awesome campaign. There are drinking rules in play. Things get a little bit out of hand sometimes, but the cast is a ton of fun. Voice actors, video game streamers, and podcasters, all of them, and just great people to hang out with. And we'd love to see you stop by anytime, so come hang out with us. If you want more, Dice Thulu has been sharing our YouTube link, where you can catch all of our back episodes. Everything goes up onto the YouTube at some point, when I'm not being too lazy to mass export them. And you can catch all of the back episodes and see everyone that I've hung out with here on the Fuzzy Dice Show there. We have a new campaign that is coming on Saturdays. It is going to be Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. It is called The Writhing Moon. And it is going to be amazing. It's going to be drama and horror. Brand new cast of people. Definitely come check it out. Also, Mondays, I now do multiplayer Monday video game streaming. Wednesdays, I do Twitch creative streaming, where I just midweek drawing. We draw. We're currently working on the Dice Thulu t-shirt, which will be coming out pretty soon, and other fun stuff. And that's really it. You can catch me tomorrow if you want. Catch me on Twitter. You'll see that I am running a game called Age of Worms. That is at 1 p.m. Eastern on Encounter Roleplay. And then I am playing in a game called Prince of the Apocalypse, which is at 4 p.m. on Encounter Roleplay. And you can catch all those on Twitter. Will be links to all of those. So, as always, thank you guys for hanging out. Don't run away, though. We're gonna share the love by throwing up a Twitch raid, and we're gonna see who of our friends are online. Thank you for the follow, Viper Sniper. Welcome to the madness, my friend. Let's click on that D&D thing and see who we can send the love to today. I don't know who is online right now. You know what? You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go send the love over to Unmade Gaming. I think they're still online. Checking right now. Yes. Okay. So !raid Unmade Gaming. We are going to spread the love. Keep this train rolling. And as always, before we get out of here, thank you for hanging out, and don't let Dice Thulu get his tentacles on you, because you know he gets very handsy when he does. We'll see you next time, guys. Take care.